Welcome back to the deep dive. So you've shared your sources, and our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to explore the incredible story of a company that really started with almost nothing.
Right. Just borrowed money and scrap metal.
Exactly. And somehow it ended up defining not just, the flavor of modern American beer, but also setting this amazing ethical framework for sustainable, large-scale manufacturing.
We are plunging into the history of Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. And this isn't just a story about good beer, though, I mean, it is definitely about that.
Oh, for sure.
But it's also this remarkable blueprint for longevity and for business character. We're looking at how Ken Grossman and Paul Camusi took what was basically a home brewing obsession.
And turned it into the seventh largest brewing company in the entire United States.
And what's really key, the third largest privately owned brewery. That's a huge part of the story.
Okay, and when we talk about scale, we should probably calibrate what that actually means for a minute. When we say seventh largest, we are talking about serious industrial volume.
Right.
1,250,000 U.S. beer barrels produced annually.
Which is a number that's hard to even picture.
It is. For context, if you're listening, a standard U.S. beer barrel, or BBL, is 31 gallons of liquid.
So we're talking about nearly 39 million gallons of beer every single year. It's immense.
An immense operation. It employs over 1,000 people, 1,050, primarily out of their original Chico, California headquarters.
And, of course, their newer facility in Mills River, North Carolina.
And what makes this deep dive so compelling, I think, is that contrast, the massive scale versus the intensely ethical way they seem to operate.
That dual identity is really the core of what we're looking at. And the key insights right off the bat show this perfectly. First, you have Sierra Nevada, universally seen as one of the architects of the entire American craft beer movement.
A true pioneer.
And second, they're these environmental titans. I mean, they won the EPA's Green Business of the Year award all the way back in 2010.
That really says it all. This is a story where passion met real mechanical ingenuity, where the necessity of their early days, that thriftiness,
later became a principal choice when they were a huge, mature company.
Right. We want to show you how that original commitment to quality and, frankly, being frugal became woven into the very DNA of the company. It's how they built a foundation that could survive the last 4 decades.
Yeah, that foundation is everything.
Okay, let's unpack this journey. When we look at the very beginning, we're talking 1979, 1980, the story is just one of pure, unadulterated bootstrapping.
It really is. Forget venture capital, forget high-interest bank loans. This was fundamentally a hobby that they tried to commercialize on sheer willpower.
And with very little money.
That's the defining context, yeah. Ken Grossman and Paul Camusi started with incredibly limited resources. They managed to pull together just $50,000 in startup capital.
And that wasn't from a bank.
No, not at all. It was secured entirely through small loans from friends and family. This was their entire budget for building a commercial brewery, which is just a staggering fact when you think about the industrial equipment you need.
$50,000 today wouldn't even get you a proper commercial mash tun, let alone back then.
Yeah.
So they rented this tiny 3,000 square foot warehouse in Chico, and this led to maybe the most iconic part of their origin story.
The DIY scavenger hunt.
Exactly. The scavenger approach to equipment.
It was pure mechanical inventiveness, and it was born out of financial necessity. They didn't buy new equipment. They engineered it. They literally pieced together their initial brewing setup using discarded dairy equipment.
Which is amazing. I mean, think about the complexity of sanitizing and adapting high-volume milk tanks and piping for brewing beer. It is not a simple switch.
Not at all. And the sources say they were scouring scrap yards for metal and spare parts just to build the basic infrastructure. The very foundation of their high-tech, award-winning brewery today was, built on repurposed trash.
It's incredible. Later on, they did get some secondhand copper brewing kettles, but they had to be sourced all the way from Germany and imported.
And that speaks volumes about the hands-on mechanical dedication Grossman had. He wasn't just a great home brewer. He understood the machinery.
He's a trained machinist, right, and had worked in bottling facilities.
Exactly. So he understood the mechanical realities that just sink so many passionate but unprepared entrepreneurs. That intimate knowledge was crucial to their survival.
And yet, with all that industrial grit, they chose a name that was purely inspirational.
Yeah, not industrial at all.
The company was named Sierra Nevada because of Ken Grossman's deep connection to the mountains. It came from his love of hiking there.
It rooted the identity of the beer in the natural, rugged landscape of California. right from the start.
So with this cobbled-together Frankenstein brewery finally up and running, they brewed their first commercial batch in November of 1980.
And that first brew was the Pale Ale.
The one that would become their signature. And then the following year, 1981, they introduced Celebration, an IPA that's been a classic winter seasonal ever since.
But it wasn't an instant success story. The immediate reality of the market was, well, it was brutal.
We often look at them now and assume it was, but the early 80s were a massive struggle for them. Craft beer wasn't even a category yet. It was a niche, almost a curiosity.
They faced really severe financial and marketing problems. I mean, remember, the distribution infrastructure for small specialty breweries just didn't exist.
So they had to do it themselves.
Grossman and Camusi had to take on the massive logistical headache of distributing the beer themselves. Driving it around Northern California in vans, selling it directly to retailers, it was a grind.
And if the quality was so high, why was it such a struggle? I think it comes down to cultural context. In 1980, the vast majority of American drinkers consumed mass-produced light lagers.
Right. And this heavily hopped, robust pale ale was a radical departure. People just didn't know what to do with it.
So what was the turning point?
That's where the inflection point becomes so vital. Two things really gave them the legitimacy they needed. First, an article in 1982 in the San Francisco Chronicle. That gave them critical media exposure.
It signaled to a wider, more educated audience that, hey, this niche product is worth seeking out.
But I think the truly revolutionary move was getting their beer into trend-setting culinary institutions. Specifically, getting it sold at Alice Waters' famous restaurant in Berkeley, Ches Panisse.
That's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ches Panisse wasn't just any restaurant. It was the epicenter of the whole local food movement. Getting placed there signaled that this pale ale was a sophisticated, high-quality, artisanal product.
It deserved a spot next to fine wine. It basically created a legitimate culinary market for craft beer where one hadn't really existed before.
And that early traction proved the concept. They sold 950 barrels in their first year, which is respectable for a scratch operation.
But they doubled that volume in the second year, and that kind of exponential growth quickly demands scale.
For sure. By 1987, they were distributing to 7 different states, and production had surged to 12,000 U.S. beer barrels a year. That tiny 3,000 square foot warehouse was clearly maxed out.
So this is when they made their first major infrastructure leap. In 1988, they moved into the much larger facility that still houses their headquarters in Chico today.
And this new space had a, state-of-the-art for the time, 100-barrel brew house and 4 open fermenters.
That growth also meant they needed a professional staff. And we should pause and recognize some of the critical people they hired back then.
Yeah, like Steve Harrison. He was SMBC's very first employee.
Right.
He handled sales and marketing, really establishing the brand identity in those 7 key states.
And maybe even more critically, they hired Steve Dressler in 1983. He went on to become the head brewer and was instrumental in maintaining the precise quality and consistency of that pale ale recipe for decades.
Right up until he retired in 2017.
Wow.
I mean, think about that consistency for a moment. 34 years of guiding the foundational flavor of a brand that grew from a few hundred barrels to over 1 million.
That level of dedication is it's virtually unheard of in high-growth companies. It ensured that as the company scaled, the product itself didn't suffer.
And we should also touch on the ownership structure. Paul Camusi decided to retire in 1998, and he sold his share of the company to Ken Grossman.
Which left Ken Grossman as the sole owner, a crucial factor in keeping that private ownership structure that's allowed them to chase their quality and sustainability goals without answering to external shareholders.
And this brings us right to their historical context. Why do we call them a pioneer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they, alongside the now defunct New Albion Brewing and Anchor Brewing, basically defined the modern American craft beer category.
They didn't just join a movement, they helped build the road for it.
And Grossman's early mechanical focus gave them a huge advantage. He observed that a lot of early microbrewers failed, not because their beer was bad,
but because they just weren't prepared for the scale and the mechanical complexity, the financial burdens of commercial brewing. He famously said that moving from home brewing to commercial scale is a much different process.
And Sierra Nevada endured because of the superior character and complexity of its beers, yes, but also because the operation itself was so physically stable. It was built on a foundation of engineering thrift, not just recipe innovation.
You could really see the respect for that legacy in 2010 for their 30th anniversary. They released collaborative beers with the other founding titans of the movement, like Fritz Maytag of Anchor and Jack McAuliffe of New Albion.
A real tribute. And they weren't just a factor either. Ken Grossman clearly understood that community engagement was key.
So in 1989, they added the Sierra Nevada taproom and restaurant to the Chico facility.
Right, giving customers a direct, high-quality way to connect with the brand.
And then that idea expanded again in 2000 with the opening of the Big Room, a full-fledged live music venue right inside the facilities.
And this isn't just some corporate cafeteria with a stage. It hosts legitimate national acts across country, folk, rock, blues. They created a destination that is part of the cultural fabric of Chico.
Okay, so now that we've established this foundation of thrift and engineering and community, let's turn our attention to the actual liquid. If the company is a pioneer, then the pale ale is the flagship that fired the first shot.
Absolutely. The pale ale is the definition of an American original. When it came out in 1980, it was a radical departure from what everyone was drinking.
Which was mostly light, colorless, highly filtered lagers.
Exactly. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale basically told American drinkers that beer could be flavorful, aromatic, and complex.
And that flavor profile is so distinct. It's described as balancing aggressive hops and hearty malt flavor. This wasn't some weak, watery effort. It was meant to be noticed.
And we know the specific ingredient that gave it its identity. Cascade hops.
Ah, the classic.
One of the early signature American hops. And it provided that incredible grapefruit aroma and that distinctive fruity palate. It's really impossible to overstate how revolutionary that flavor profile was in the early 1980s.
It tasted like nothing else on the shelf.
Nothing. And its staying power is just remarkable. Even as recently as 2012, with thousands of new craft competitors on the market, it was still cited as the best-selling pale ale in the United States.
That shows such enduring quality and relevance.
And there's a key technical aspect that really speaks to their commitment to quality and longevity. And it's vital for our listeners to understand. And that's bottle conditioning.
Okay, that sounds technical, but it's a huge choice for a large brewery to make. Can you unpack exactly what bottle conditioning is and, why it matters to the person drinking the beer?
Sure. So bottle conditioning means that instead of filtering out all the yeast before you bottle and then force carbonating it with CO2.
Which is what most big breweries do.
Right. Instead, they leave a small amount of live yeast in the beer and add a little dose of fresh sugar right before they put the cap on. The yeast then ferments that sugar inside the sealed bottle, which naturally creates the carbon dioxide and the pressure.
So it's naturally carbonated inside the bottle.
Exactly. And that achieves a very fine, persistent bubble structure and a softer mouthfeel than you get with forced carbonation. But more importantly, the yeast acts as a natural preservative.
How does it do that?
It scavenges any stray oxygen that might be in the bottle. This means the beer has significantly better shelf stability, and it actually matures slightly over time, developing greater complexity and rounding out the hop profile.
Wow. So it's a commitment to traditional brewing that really flies in the face of mass production efficiency.
It's a riskier, slower, and more expensive process, for sure. But it delivers a demonstrably better product. It's one of those foundational choices that just speaks to the company's DNA.
It connects right back to that idea of longevity we talked about. They were building beers that were meant to age and travel well, not just be consumed right off the line.
Precisely. And while the pale ale was defining a new era, their commitment to traditional brewing was there from day one. They weren't just chasing new trends, they were respecting history.
You see that in their other foundation styles, right? The porter and the stout.
Exactly. Both have been in continuous production since the company's very first year, 1980. These are robust, dark ales, proving they weren't just a one-trick pony relying on hops.
And these weren't just placeholders either. I mean, the legendary beer writer Michael Jackson gave them high praise, describing the porter and stout as gently coffee-ish and beautifully roasty.
So they were mastering traditional European dark beer. At the same time, they were pioneering the new American pale ale. Just incredible versatility.
And then, moving into the 21st century, the company showed it could still innovate. In 2009, they introduced 2 new year-round beers.
Right, which further cemented their quality across different styles. The first was Torpedo Extra IPA.
Ah, Torpedo. The rise of the IPA was unstoppable by then, and this was their answer. It's a classic American IPA, really known for its intense but clean hop bitterness and aroma.
And it helped them capture a huge part of the growing IPA market. Torpedo also introduced a proprietary piece of equipment they invented, the hop torpedo.
Another example of their mechanical ingenuity.
It is. It allows for dry hopping in a way that maximizes the hop aroma without adding a lot of astringency. Again, engineering in service of flavor quality.
And the second major launch that year was a total departure from
A
that.
complete 180. Kellerweis Hefeweizen, a traditional Bavarian Hefeweizen, a cloudy wheat beer.
That they could so seamlessly pivot from the aggressive West Coast hop style to a delicate, traditional German style that showed true brewing mastery.
And of course, the portfolio keeps evolving. They've since added Hazy Little Thing, successfully entering the popular New England IPA category, proving they can stay relevant while maintaining their core standards.
And this quality isn't just, marketing talk. It's backed up by decades and decades of awards.
That's where the numbers really tell the story. Their award history at competitions like the Great American Beer Festival and the World Beer Cup shows a consistency that very few breweries, regardless of size, can match.
You can just track the Pale Ale winning multiple GABF golds between 1983 and 1995. That alone illustrates the level of enduring excellence that defined them in those critical growth years.
And the recognition is so much broader than just the Pale Ale. You look at the long-term medal winners, Bigfoot Barleywine, their stout, and more recently medals for Kellerweis, Kolsch, even specialty releases like their barrel-aged narwhal.
So they aren't just famous for one recipe.
No, they are masters of multiple global styles. And that speaks to the technical prowess they maintained even while undergoing massive scaling.
So we've seen the pioneering quality of the beer itself. Now we pivot to the pioneering quality of the operation. And this is where the sheer scale of their sustainability efforts becomes, well, just astonishing, and where that scrappy, resource-conscious founding DNA really shines through.
The environmental commitment is not secondary, it's integral to who they are. The highest recognition of this was getting the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Green Business of the Year award in 2010.
For a manufacturer that uses vast amounts of water and power, that is a monumental achievement.
It is.
Let's start with the most dramatic feature, the solar commitment at the Chico facility. And we aren't talking about something cosmetic like a few panels for show. We're talking about building a significant power plant right on their own site.
Exactly. They installed 10,000 photovoltaic modules. They cover their extensive rooftops and parking areas, and they generate 2.6 megawatts of solar electricity.
Which provides a substantial portion of the power needed to run the entire brewing and bottling operation.
And as a way of integrating this into the community and employee life, the premises also include charging stations for electric vehicles. It's a holistic approach, generate clean power and incentivize clean transportation.
But the true genius, and this connects right back to their scrapyard origins, is the closed-loop waste management system.
This is where it gets really impressive.
While a lot of companies aim for sustainability, Sierra Nevada is achieving industrial near perfection. They divert over 99.5% of the brewery plant's solid waste from landfills.
That is an almost unheard of diversion rate for a facility producing over 1 million barrels of beer a year.
Let's break down how they do it, starting with generating energy from their own waste.
This is their spent grain, which is still rich in nutrients and fiber, is sold immediately to local cattle ranchers. It serves as high-quality livestock feed. That eliminates the need for expensive disposal and benefits local farms.
And water, the most critical resource in brewing. Industrial brewing consumes huge amounts of water, which then becomes spent water needing municipal treatment.
Sierra Nevada just bypassed that. They bypassed that expensive and environmentally taxing reliance on municipal services by building their own advanced water treatment plant on site.
So they handle it all themselves.
All of it. This allows them to treat the spent water internally and then reuse it, primarily for drip irrigation on their surrounding fields. They are minimizing their draw on local water and keeping the cycle closed.
This end-to-end commitment even extended into logistics, which demonstrates a massive capital investment in green infrastructure.
This is maybe the most surprising detail of all. Sierra Nevada actually owns 1 mile of private railway spur in Chico.
A private railway, that's not a heritage track for show, right? This is an active logistical asset.
It is. It's used for intermodal freight transport.
So why is a private railway spur such a big environmental investment for a brewery?
Because it drastically cuts their carbon footprint related to ingredients. By bringing large shipments of bulk ingredients like malt via rail directly to their facility, they avoid a huge amount of road transport.
And one rail car holds way more than a truck.
One single rail car can hold the equivalent volume of 4 semi-trailers of grain. Imagine the reduction in diesel fuel consumption and road congestion they achieve with that 1 mile of rail. It's a massive efficiency gain disguised as a piece of infrastructure.
And the same rigor applies to the ingredients themselves.
Absolutely. They are the single largest buyer of organic hops in the United States. But, true to their character, they also farm their own ingredients, cultivating organic hops and barley on site.
And that's used for their special annual Chico Estate Harvest Ale release.
The ultimate local product.
So they set this incredibly high bar in Chico, but when they built their second facility on the East Coast, they didn't just meet that standard, they somehow exceeded it.
The Mills River, North Carolina facility, which opened in 2014, is a testament to their unwavering environmental philosophy. It was designed from the ground up for maximum efficiency, and it achieved the highest possible standard, LEE Platinum certification.
LE Platinum, that's the top designation for leadership in energy and environmental design. Achieving that for an industrial manufacturing facility is incredibly difficult.
It really is. It requires maximizing efficiencies in water use, energy performance, material selection, and site development.
And you see that commitment in the construction details. The Mills River site was built on a forested tract, but they don't just clear cut and discard the lumber.
No, they reuse the cut-down trees as structural lumber inside the building, and they even fashion them into rainwater cisterns to flush the toilets.
Just constantly thinking about how to reuse and conserve. That facility is also certified as a Platinum Zero Waste facility by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council.
It really solidifies that connection we identified earlier. The necessity of thrift during the startup phase has been transformed into this core, award-winning, large-scale corporate philosophy. They don't waste resources because they never learned how to.
It makes you wonder, right? Did their $50,000 scrapyard start accidentally hardwire their engineering team to think about conservation first?
It feels like it. They had to be mechanical geniuses and thrift leaders to survive, and they simply applied that same innovative, resourceful mindset when they had millions of dollars to spend on infrastructure.
All right, moving from the factory floor back to the fermenter, let's explore the seasonal and special releases that maintain their reputation for innovation. And we have to start with the strongest of them all. Bigfoot Barleywine Style Ale.
Bigfoot is one of the most anticipated annual releases, usually hitting shelves in January or February. It's an American legend, recognized as one of the first widely available American barley wines.
And it is strong. It tops out at 9.6% ABV. It's brewed with 2 types of malt, 3 different hops. It's designed to be big, bold, and highly cellarable.
It's been winning medals since the mid-'80s. But there's that great legal nuance tied to its name. Why does it have to be called a barley wine style ale?
Right, why the style ale part?
That's due to historical U.S. alcohol regulation. Federal laws stipulate that only fermented alcohols derived from fruit, like grapes, can be legally marketed simply as wine.
Ah, so since barley wine is from grain, from barley, it has to carry that style ale designation.
Exactly. To avoid confusing consumers or violating labeling laws, even though the strength and character are very comparable to wine.
A classic example of regulations catching up to a traditional style, but maybe the most influential seasonal releases they pioneered were the harvest ales, the ones that focus on wet hops.
The harvest ales are crucial to understanding their innovation cycle. The Northern Hemisphere Harvest Ale, introduced in 1996, was a historical landmark. This is the first commercial fresh hop ale brewed and sold in the United States.
Okay, so what does fresh hop or wet hop actually mean, and why is it so difficult to do commercially?
So typically when hops are harvested in late summer, they have to be immediately kilned or dried to reduce their moisture from around 80% down to 10% or less. This preserves them for year-round brewing.
But the drying process sacrifices some of the aroma?
It sacrifices some of the intense volatile oils that give hops their delicate, fresh-off-the-vine aroma. So a wet hop ale bypasses that drying process entirely.
They use them fresh.
Precisely. They use hops that have been picked within hours, sometimes minutes of being harvested, while they're still full of moisture. This captures an incredibly vibrant, green, intense aromatic profile you just can't get from dried hops.
The logistical challenge must be immense.
It is. They have to get the hops from the fields in eastern Washington to the brewery and into the kettle almost immediately, often within 24 hours, before the undried hops start to degrade.
Wow, that's a huge commitment to freshness. And they later expanded this idea globally, right?
They did, with the Southern Hemisphere Harvest Ale. They apply the same principle, but use freshly harvested wet hops imported all the way from New Zealand, allowing them to capture the unique flavor profiles of those distinct hop varieties.
And then linking back to their sustainability efforts, the peak of this is the Chico State Harvest Ale,
which is brewed exclusively with the organic wet hops and barley grown right on the brewery's own premises. That is the definition of a hyperlocal farm-to-glass product.
Beyond those specialty releases, you have the seasonal mainstays like Celebration Ale. It's been their winter seasonal since 1981. A beautiful example of consistency.
Celebration is interesting because its style can be a little confusing.
Right. It often wins medals in the IPA category, but a lot of people describe it as more of a hoppy, malty amber ale, or even a bigger version of the pale ale.
It has that aggressive hop structure, but with a richer, darker malt profile that's perfect for winter. Its longevity speaks for itself, having been around almost as long as the company.
And their commitment to diverse styles continues with their other seasonals. You've got the Summerfest lager, a crisp Pilsner in the Czech style, their annual Oktoberfest collaboration, and Beer Camp Hoppy Lager.
And we also have to note their dedication to their local roots. They produce the Old Chico brand, including Old Chico Crystal Wheat, named in memory of the 19th century Chico brewery.
And that's a tribute to local history that is only distributed in the immediate Northern California area around Chico. It really reinforces their local identity despite their global scale.
Right.
And finally, we get to what is arguably the most powerful story of their character and community impact: the Resilience Butte County Proud IPA. This goes way beyond brewing and touches on deep corporate responsibility.
This emerged in late 2018 after the devastating Camp Fire, which was the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history. And it ravaged communities right near the Chico brewery.
And tragically, about 50 of Sierra Nevada's own employees lost their homes in that fire.
The company's response was not just to donate money, but to mobilize the entire industry. They announced the creation of Resilience IPA, a limited edition beer designed to raise funds for the campfire recovery.
And what followed was just this unprecedented act of industry collaboration. Sierra Nevada took the initiative to publish the exact recipe for the Resilience IPA and invited any brewery in the world to brew it.
They provided the framework, the name, and the commitment to donate 100% of their sales proceeds to the relief fund. And that invitation was answered on a massive scale.
Over 1,500 other breweries across the U.S. and internationally signed up to brew and sell that exact same Resilience IPA recipe.
I mean, think about the logistical nightmare of coordinating that many different businesses, from tiny microbreweries to established regionals, to use the same name, recipe, and commit to the same charitable goal. It required immense leadership from Sierra Nevada.
And the result was just staggering. This collective effort, marshaled and led by Sierra Nevada, ultimately raised a total of $15 million for campfire relief.
It just showed the immense emotional and economic power of the craft beer community when it's guided by a credible, respected leader.
And it's a crucial detail that while they led this massive collaborative effort, Sierra Nevada has consistently maintained a neutral public stance on broader political issues.
Right. They focus strictly on their business and their community impact. They even had to publicly reiterate this back in 2010 when a beer industry group mistakenly linked them to opposing California's Proposition 19, which would have legalized marijuana.
So they're a company focused squarely on their product, their employees, and their environment. So after this extraordinary deep dive into Sierra Nevada, what does it all leave us with? I think it's clear their success is defined by this dual legacy of pioneering excellence, both in the glass and in the factory.
They didn't just stumble into success. They pioneered the aggressive, hop-forward flavor profile that defined American craft beer, and at the same time, they pioneered an ethical, sustainable industrial model.
Everything from their railway spur ownership and their closed-loop waste systems
to achieving LEED Platinum certification at their newest facility. It just sets the benchmark for responsible, large-scale manufacturing.
It's truly amazing to trace their journey from that initial $50,000 borrowed from friends and family and the equipment they built from scrapyard parts and old dairy machinery,
all the way to this highly influential 1,000-plus employee operation with environmental accolades that rival the biggest corporations on Earth.
This continuous commitment to thrift and ingenuity really does form a perfect circle. In the beginning, they had to conserve and repurpose resources just to survive.
And now, as a massive company, they choose to own their supply chain farming organic hops, installing massive solar arrays, treating their own water, because they fundamentally understand the value of every single resource.
That original mechanical necessity became their greatest ethical strength.
And that's the powerful takeaway we want to leave you with. Consider the relationship between the necessity of frugality during that 1980 startup phase, when survival depended on building equipment from scrap metal, and the choice of award-winning comprehensive sustainability that defines the mature company today. Was their environmental leadership pre-programmed by the simple financial constraints of their first days?
A profound thought for you to contemplate the next time you hold a bottle of pale ale. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.